Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really broad look actually. We've got sources stretching all the way from ancient philosophy right through to, well, modern corporate HQs.
Yeah, it's quite a mix. We're digging into political thinkers, military strategists, Eastern philosophy, even case studies like Pixar and Unilever. The goal is to sort of pull out the common threads on leadership.
Exactly. How do leaders, how do organizations balance those core values, the ethical bedrock, with the pressure for results right now? And importantly, how do they build something that actually lasts?
It's that constant tension, isn't it? Principle versus profit, long-term vision versus short-term demands. We want to see how different thinkers and leaders have tried to define right action when the pressure's really on.
Okay, so let's dive in. Part one starts, I think, where it has to, with that fundamental philosophical tension between the individual and the collective good. We're going straight back to Aristotle.
Right. Aristotle and his view on happiness in the city-state versus, the individual person. It's maybe not what you'd expect. It's quite pragmatic.
Pragmatic how?
Well, he looks at it systemically. He says there's generally a congruence, a match, basically between the city-state thriving, being happy in his sense, and the happiness of the individuals in what he calls the G class.
And the G class, just to clarify for listeners, that's like the active participating citizens, right? Not necessarily everyone living there.
Precisely. The citizens whose function contributes to the overall health of the state. And yeah, usually a well-run state is the best place for these individuals to flourish too, but and this is the crucial part, that congruence isn't guaranteed.
Ah, okay. So it's not some kind of perfect harmony where the state's needs always align with mine.
Definitely not. He uses this analogy like of the body. A hand works best as part of a healthy body, right? There's congruence there. But if the whole body is sick or threatened...
Then sometimes you might have to sacrifice the part.
Exactly. Preserving the health of the body, the state in this analogy, might mean sacrificing an individual part for the good of the whole. It's tough.
Yeah, that sounds pretty harsh to our modern ears, focused so much on individual rights. But Aristotle saw this lack of a guarantee as a strength.
Yeah, he did. He saw it as realistic. It acknowledges the sheer complexity of these systems. Any philosophy promising perfect alignment all the time, that's just utopian fantasy, doomed to fail.
So it forces leaders, and citizens too, I guess,
Yeah.
to accept that tough trade-offs are sometimes inevitable for the whole thing to survive.
It's about facing reality. The system, when under threat, might be greater than the sum of its parts. It grounds governance in a kind of tough-minded realism.
Okay, so Aristotle sets the stage with that system-level tension. Then we have Cicero, who comes in with a really structured ethical framework for the leader within that system.
Yes, Cicero's framework is key because it really pushes back against just looking at the consequences. He says right action, or virtue, comes from four main sources. First is wisdom, or prudence, basically, understanding the truth and how to handle it skillfully.
Seems fundamental, yeah.
Totally. Second is justice. Things like good fellowship, keeping promises, giving people what they're due. Third is fortitude, greatness, and strength of mind, courage.
Mental resilience.
Right. And the fourth is moderation, order, measure, self-control in what you do.
But the really powerful part for me is how Cicero connects these virtues to expediency, to what seems practical or advantageous. He draws such a hard line.
He really does. He says it's in the utmost degree base, not just to choose expediency over what's right, but even to compare them, to even put them side by side as equals.
So true expediency isn't something you aim for separately.
According to Cicero, no. True expediency naturally follows from doing the right thing, from acting virtuously according to those four pillars. If something looks like a shortcut, if it seems expedient but violates justice or truth,
It's a trap.
it's a trap, a foolish cunning, he calls it, pretending to be prudence, but ultimately it damages things.
Let's look at his examples. They really hammer this home. Starting with the noble crime, killing a tyrant.
Right. Cicero says killing a tyrant is noble, even if that tyrant was, say, your close friend. Because removing the oppression is the right thing to do for the state. Therefore, the expediency of it saving the state naturally follows from the right action. Right leads expediency.
Okay, and the flip side. That story of the Roman soldier after the Battle of Cannae.
Ah, yes. After that disaster, some Roman prisoners were sent back to Hannibal's camp under oath to negotiate a ransom, one soldier wanting to get out of the oath and stay in Rome.
He tried to game the system.
Exactly. He left with the others, then quickly went back to the camp saying he forgot something. Then he returned to Rome, claiming, hey, I went back to the enemy camp, so my oath is technically fulfilled.
Using a technicality to break the spirit of the promise.
Precisely. And Cicero slams this. He calls it Foolish cunning perversely assuming the aspect of prudence. The deceit actually makes the perjury worse. The soldier tried to compare his personal gain, his expediency, with the right action of honoring the oath, and that comparison itself was base.
And the most striking example, the really tough one, is the Roman Senate refusing to ransom 8,000 captured soldiers after Cannae. They could have paid.
Easily. It seemed expedient get 8,000 trained men back immediately. Huge gain, right? But the Senate refused.
Why? That seems almost cruel.
Because they decided the principle was more important. They needed to embed the mindset that Roman soldiers must either conquer or die, setting a precedent that surrender could be easily bought. That was judged more damaging in the long run than losing those 8,000 men.
Wow. So the immediate, tangible gain was completely outweighed by the commitment to a core principle, a cultural value.
That's Cicero's point. True expediency sinks when compared with the right. It's about character and long-term strategic vision, not just short-term fixes.
Okay, we've got the external system tension from Aristotle, the ethical framework from Cicero. Now we shift inward, looking at purpose, drawing from the Bhagavad Gita and Emerson. This feels like a different angle on success.
It really is. The Bhagavad Gita offers this powerful counter-narrative to pure materialism. It directly criticizes what it calls the mammonist philosophy.
Which is big,
Just working super hard only to enjoy sense gratification, acquire stuff, experience pleasures. The Gita says, wait, human life is actually meant for something deeper, self-realization.
And that happens through different paths, the yogas. Could you remind us what those are?
Sure. Karma yoga is about selfless action, doing your duty without being attached to the results. Jnana yoga is the path of knowledge, understanding through philosophy, and bhakti yoga is the path of devotion, of service. The point is, material success shouldn't be the goal. It might happen, but it's not the purpose.
So from a leadership perspective, this suggests your driving purpose has to be bigger than just the quarterly numbers. But the ED also acknowledges people are caught up in desires, right?
It does. And for those people, it suggests purification through yajnas, basically, sacrifices or rituals. These are ways to satisfy desires responsibly without getting tangled up in the karmic consequences, the reactions of your actions.
A way to manage the material world without being totally consumed by it?
Kind of. And it also adds this layer that prosperity isn't just about human effort. It depends on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, suggesting our efforts are part of a larger cosmic cooperation.
That's a profound shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Then you bring in Emerson, who takes this fight against materialism and distraction right into, 19th century America.
Yeah.
He sees society itself as the enemy of purpose.
Emerson is the ultimate nonconformist, isn't he? He calls society a joint stock company, conspiring against the individuality, the manhood of its members. Society just wants one thing, conformity.
And his solution?
Be a nonconformist. Trust only your own mind, your own integrity. That's the only sacred thing. It's a radical call for self-reliance.
Pretty challenging for anyone working in, say, a large organization today. And his idea of goodness isn't soft and fluffy either. He says it needs an edge.
Yeah, else it is none. He demands this fierce authenticity. He even says, controversially, that the doctrine of hatred must be preached when the doctrine of love becomes weak and whining.
Okay, unpack that. He's not actually advocating hate, is he?
No. He's attacking superficial, weak, performative goodness, the kind of sentimentality that feels good but doesn't actually do anything or challenge anything. He wants integrity with teeth.
So he's criticizing the person who talked a big game about justice far away, but maybe isn't honest or kind in their daily life.
Exactly that. The edge is the courage to speak hard truths, to make difficult choices based on principle, even if society doesn't like it. It's about integrity over just being agreeable.
Okay, so part one gave us the philosophical deep background, state versus individual, right, versus expedient, purpose versus conformity. Now part two brings us into the modern workplace. We start with Pixar. Fascinating case study.
It really is. Pixar's famous for its campus, right?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs designed it with these pathways meant to force people to bump into each other, spark ideas, and the crazy offices, the tiki huts and all that.
Yeah, the fun stuff.
But Ed Catmull, one of the founders, he's very clear. That visible stuff, the building, the decor, that's not the core strength.
That's what it is.
It's the commitment, the deep down, sometimes painful commitment to facing reality, acknowledging problems openly, actively digging for the hidden problems, even when it's uncomfortable, and then throwing everything they have at solving them. The real strength is in their process for finding and fixing flaws.
And yet, even with all that focus on openness, they famously missed a huge problem on Toy Story, their breakthrough film.
They totally did. There was this serious ongoing rift, as Cadmol calls it, between the creative teams, the directors, writers, animators, and the production department.
The people actually making sure the film gets made on time and on budget.
Exactly, and those production managers felt completely marginalized. They felt disrespected, like they were just pencil pushers getting in the way of the creative geniuses.
That sounds familiar. That tension exists in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But how did Pixar leadership, trying so hard to be open, miss something so big?
Well, it shows that just saying, my door is open, isn't enough, you know? There were deeper cultural issues, maybe remnants of the old Hollywood hierarchy, where production staff just didn't challenge the creatives. People were afraid.
Afraid of rocking the boat, being seen as negative?
Probably. It took specific new structures, new processes to actually get those issues out into the open safely. Which leads us to the Braintrust.
Ah, yes, the legendary Braintrust.
Yeah.
What was its specific function?
It was designed purely to excavate the truth about a film's story problems. It's a meeting of peers, directors, writers, story leads who give brutally honest feedback on a film in progress.
Brutally honest being the key words.
Absolutely. The rules were critical. No one is there to defend their work or win the argument. The only goal is to make the movie better. All critique is aimed at the film, not the person.
And the commitment to that level of candor went right to the top, overriding even Steve Jobs.
That's right. Even though Jobs was deeply involved in product at Apple, everyone agreed he shouldn't be in the Braintrust meetings at Pixar. Keeping him out sent a huge message.
What message was that?
That candor was valued more than hierarchy. That the quality of the idea, the truth about the story, mattered more than pleasing the CEO or the biggest shareholder. The film's quality was paramount.
Which ties directly into their guiding principle, right? John Lasseter's phrase.
Quality is the best business plan. Yeah, it wasn't just a slogan. It meant quality is the starting point, the prerequisite. It's a mindset, not just something you check off a list. Good business results follow from that relentless focus on quality.
Okay, from creative quality at Pixar, let's scale up to a global giant like Unilever and how they tried to embed purpose and transparency right into their core business.
Unilever's Sustainable Living Plan, the USLP, is a really interesting example of moving sustainability from the fringes, the CSR department, right into the heart of the business strategy.
So it wasn't just a nice to have anymore.
Not at all. They made it an explicit driver of success, and the key was how they managed it.
How so?
They treated it like any other major business initiative. They set really ambitious, concrete targets, things like environmental impact, social conditions in the supply chain. They put metrics on those targets, and crucially, they linked performance against those USLP goals to rewards, to bonuses, to promotions.
So it had teeth. It affected people's jobs and paychecks.
Exactly. It created real accountability across the board, not just in one isolated department. And this commitment extended to transparency, too, especially around ingredients.
Right, the fragrance thing. That was pretty radical.
It was. Consumers were getting worried about what was hidden in ingredient lists, especially under generic terms like fragrance. So Unilever started publishing detailed information online about the sub-ingredients in their fragrances down to tiny concentrations.
Even though fragrance formulas are usually guarded like state secrets.
Yep. They chose transparency and building consumer trust over keeping those proprietary secrets locked down. It was a big move.
That kind of transparency requires focus and clear goals, which brings us neatly to OKR's objectives and key results. Their first superpower is focus and commitment.
Right. OKRs are basically a framework to combat organizational drift, to make sure everyone is pulling in the same direction on the things that really matter. Good leaders using OKRs have to invest the time up front to choose what counts.
Which often means saying no to other good ideas.
A lot of no's, usually. And then they have to commit, not just in words, but visibly, in how they spent their time, their budget, what they talk about in meetings.
And it's not just top-down dictation, is it? It's meant to be collaborative.
That's crucial. OKRs work best as a cooperative social contract. You need buy-in. If goals are just handed down, people might comply, but you don't get that maximum effort and alignment. The most powerful OKRs often start lower down.
Like the YouTube example at Google.
Perfect example. A product manager on the front lines noticed that hardly anyone was logging into YouTube. Big problem, because logged-in users mean better data, more personalization, more revenue.
So this objective to get more logins bubbled up.
It did, and it was so obviously important that Larry Page, the CEO, didn't just approve it, he elevated it to a company-wide Google objective.
But he also pushed them, right?
Yeah, he cut the deadline from 6 months down to 3. That showed serious commitment from the top. It demonstrated that great, impactful objectives could come from anywhere, and the leadership would back them.
Okay, so we have structure, purpose, focus. Now let's talk about the human element, emotional intelligence, and leadership, especially when things get tough, like navigating conflict.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey's win-win.
Covey frames think win-win, not just as a tactic you pull out in a negotiation, but as fundamental to your character. It takes courage to stand up for your own needs and consideration, to genuinely try and understand the other side.
And it's harder when the other person isn't playing that game.
Much harder. If you're dealing with someone stuck in a win-lose mindset, you need real inner strength, real character, to keep seeking that mutually beneficial outcome.
Peter Drucker adds another layer here about decision-making. The importance of organizing disagreement. What does that mean?
It means a good leader doesn't just look for consensus on their preferred plan. They actively seek out why people disagree. They want the conflicting views, the critiques.
Why? Wouldn't that just slow things down?
It might seem like it, but Drucker argues it's essential. It protects you from plausible but flawed ideas. It forces everyone to really test assumptions and consider alternatives. It leads to stronger decisions in the end.
It sounds a bit like the Braintrust, again, creating safety for honest disagreement. Brené Brown talks about vulnerability and asking tough questions.
Yes, she connects empathy directly to leadership. Staying out of judgment is key, and that means being aware of your own struggles. Empathy isn't just feeling sorry for someone, it's being fluent in emotions, being able to communicate understanding.
And sometimes that means asking things that feel awkward.
Definitely. She gives the example of a leader potentially asking a struggling employee, "Are you lonely?" It cuts through the professional facade to the human need underneath. It normalizes fear and might actually get to the root cause of a problem, which might be connection, not competence.
That need for connection is amplified during really uncertain times, isn't it? Like crises or big downturns.
Absolutely. When everything's up in the air, the leader's job isn't to pretend they have all the answers. It's to embrace the uncertainty, share information, be visible, shoot down rumors.
So name the fear.
Name it and normalize it, saying things like, "Look, this is going to be hard. There's a lot we don't know, but we'll figure it out together." That builds collective resilience instead of letting individual anxiety spiral.
We also need to be careful about our motivational tools, right? Those catchy slogans like, trust the process.
Yeah, this can be tricky. Trust the process sounds good. It sounds reassuring. But if it leads people to just passively wait for the process to fix things, to abdicate their own responsibility.
It becomes an excuse for inaction.
Exactly. Or just dull repetition. One creative leader had a great take. You have to actively trigger the process, watch it, see if it's working, and be willing to slap it around a bit if it's not. The process needs active human engagement and judgment.
Okay, moving into our final section, part 3. Power, command, and control. We're starting with the big political philosophers Hobbes and Locke on the architecture of power.
Right. Hobbes, making the case for a strong sovereign, particularly a monarch, argues that whoever is responsible for the goal maintaining peace and defense must control the means. Meaning the sovereign needs the power to choose ministers, reward allies, punish dissenters, especially where the law is silent. Absolute control is necessary, in his view, to prevent society collapsing back into chaos, the state of nature.
But even Hobbes saw weak points, didn't he? Especially around money.
He did. He warned that public funds, lands set aside for the state, are easily lost or wasted if the leadership is too negligent of money or takes reckless risks with the public purse. Financial mismanagement by the sovereign could dissolve the whole system.
A surprisingly modern warning, really. Then Locke comes in with the counter-argument focused on limiting that power.
Locke's starting point is different. The purpose of government is the good of mankind. Therefore, rulers can and must be opposed if they start using their power for destruction instead of preservation.
But he also recognized that people don't rush to revolution easily.
No, he was very realistic about that. He observed that people are generally more disposed to suffer than right themselves by resistance. Revolutions or serious resistance only happen when the abuses become widespread, general, and the malicious designs of the rulers are plain for all to see.
There's a high threshold for action.
A very high threshold, which unfortunately creates space for manipulation by savvy operators who understand that inertia.
Which brings us to that incredible Robert Moses anecdote. Talk about manipulating the system.
Oh, it's a classic. pure bureaucratic genius in a dark way. The New York legislature tried to put a check on Moses' power by requiring all the money from his authorities to go through the city controller, acting as the authority's agent.
Standard procedure, right. The controller acts as a fiscal watchdog.
Normally, yes.
Yeah.
But Moses inserted one tiny sentence into the legislation. It said the controller had to pay the money out, but only on the requisition of the chairman of the authority.
And the chairman was?
Moses himself. So, with that one clause slipped in quietly, he completely neutered the controller. The controller legally had to hold the money, but had zero power to question or stop Moses spending it however he wanted.
Turn the watchdog into an errand boy, as the source puts it.
Precisely. It shows how power can be subverted not by breaking a law, but by subtly rewriting it. You have to watch the details.
Let's shift from bureaucratic power to military command. Clausewitz and Sun Tzu offer insights on strategy and preparation.
Clausewitz gives us these practical, almost geometric rules for the battlefield, like the avant-garde rule. Your forward scouts need to be close enough to report back, but not so close they get easily attacked. It's about balancing information and security.
Sun Tzu takes it to a higher level, doesn't he? More philosophical?
He does. He emphasizes that war is inherently dangerous, baneful, and leaders have a profound moral responsibility. A general must practice constantly, study deeply before risking soldiers' lives.
Competence is a moral requirement.
Absolutely. And war requires guile and stratagem, but that cunning must be built on a foundation of rigorous preparation and understanding. This idea of deep foresight connects to Robert Greenleaf's concept of servant leadership.
Greenleaf talks about foresight being the leader's essential lead. If you lose that,
You're just reacting. You're not leading anymore. You're just managing crises. To maintain that foresight, Greenleaf says the leader needs to live a kind of schizoid life, deeply involved in the present, making the immediate decisions, but simultaneously detached enough to see today's events in the context of history and the long-term future. It's this ability to zoom in and zoom out that allows for true strategic thinking.
we also see the importance of rewarding effort and virtue in Xenophon's Cyropedia, the story of Chrysantas.
Right. Chrysantas wasn't the strongest physically, but he was wise. He argued that in any joint effort, like warfare, you have to make sure the people doing the hardest work and taking the biggest risks get the greatest rewards and honors.
Because if the cowards get the same treatment as the brave,
Then why be brave? Why put in the extra effort? Zeal, motivation, it all depends on people believing their sacrifices will be recognized and valued by the leadership. It's about creating a just system of recognition.
okay, our final set of contrasts looks at what good leadership even means. We start with a really stark example from Frederick Douglass.
It's heartbreaking, really. Douglass writes that enslaved people would call an overseer like a Mr. Hopkins good. Not because he was actually kind or just, but simply because he was less cruel than others. He didn't seem to enjoy whipping people.
So good just meant less monstrous.
Exactly. It shows how profoundly an oppressive system can warp language and morality itself. The standard for acceptable behavior gets dragged down to an appalling level.
Then, jumping to the modern day, Brené Brown offers a definition rooted in connection and empathy.
Brown sees empathy as a skill, a practice. It's about understanding feelings, communicating that understanding without judgment. And it requires leaders to be in touch with their own vulnerability, their own struggles. It's about connecting human to human.
It's active, not passive sympathy.
Right. And finally, John C. Maxwell offers a very outward-focused definition of leadership success.
Which is?
He says the ultimate measure isn't how far you advance yourself, your career, your status. The real bottom line is how far you advance others.
Through service.
Through serving them, adding value to their lives, helping them grow. The gut check for a leader, according to Maxwell, is, are the people following you better off because of your leadership? Are they growing?
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. From Aristotle's state versus individual, Cicero's hard line on principle over expediency, the Gita's call for purpose beyond materialism.
Through Pixar's relentless search for truth, conflict and uncertainty.
To Hobbes and Locke on sovereign power, Moses manipulating the system, military foresight, and finally those contrasting definitions of good leadership. It's quite a tapestry.
It really shows the consistency of these challenges across centuries and contexts, doesn't it? The pressure to cut corners, the difficulty of fostering real candor, the fight against conformity and short-term thinking, these seem timeless.
So the big takeaway for anyone listening, for any leader, it seems to be that genuine, sustainable success, whether you're running a country or a company, isn't accidental. It requires deliberately building and protecting systems where ethics aren't just talked about, but are actually measured, rewarded, and defended.
Yeah, the battle for purpose, for principle. It's fought every day against the easy options, against the pull of just managing by numbers or following the crowd.
Okay, so here's the final thought to leave you with. We heard Hobbes warn about public funds being vulnerable to negligent leadership, and Locke observed that people often suffer injustice rather than resist. We also saw the modern push for radical transparency, Unilever listing chemicals, OKRs demanding clarity. So think about this. What structures today, corporate or governmental, look solid on the surface but might be most vulnerable to being hollowed out or co-opted, precisely because, as Locke said, the majority is more disposed to suffer than to challenge those subtle, perhaps legalistic erosions of oversight or accountability. Where
Are today's errand boy clauses hiding? Where does the formal structure of accountability exist, but the actual power, the resources, the will to enforce it has been quietly drained away? That's where the real danger might lie. It's something worth pondering.